Hi, I'm Danny Ehrlich with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities at the Jordan River. Folks, can you believe it? We're here at the Jordan River. Now you might be saying to yourselves, this ain't no Mississippi, right? Doesn't look all that big. Now let's be honest, it was never the Mississippi, but over history it certainly was a little wider than this. And in fact, if we pan the camera, maybe if we can a little bit, if you see the steps and the walls, you can see the white fences. That when the Jordan River is full, it would probably reach as high as that. And the same thing on the other side, which is today in the Kingdom of Jordan, because today the Jordan River is the border between the state of Israel and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan on the eastern bank. But if you go back 2,000 years ago to the time of Jesus and the Second Temple period, go back 3,000 years ago to the times of King David and King Solomon, this river on both sides is part of Israel, part of Judah, part of the Jewish land here in the land of Israel. Now this site here, this is known as a baptismal site, is associated with three scriptural stories. The first one, going in chronological order, the first one is the crossing of Joshua and the tribes of Israel. And you remember the tremendous miracle that's done. We all know about, of course, the splitting of the Red Sea, right, leaving Egypt. But when they come into the land from the east, crossing the Jordan River into the land of Israel, the river has to be split. And we're told that the river sort of piles up upstream until the children of Israel pass through. Now you look at it today and you say, well, you know, you look at it today, so this isn't a big deal to just go in and come out the other side. But imagine it if it was as high as I showed you before. Not so easy. It needs to be split in a miraculous way. Now, why does this site get associated with where Joshua crosses with the tribes of Israel? Because the biblical text is very clear in the book of Joshua. It's opposite which city? Opposite Jericho. And if you cross the Jordan River here from the east and you're coming westward into the land of Israel, what's the first settled place you're going to hit? That's going to be Jericho. And then we fast forward about 400 or 500 years after Joshua, and we get to the figure of the prophet Elijah. The prophet Elijah here with his student Elisha. And this, of course, we know when Elijah is taken up to heaven in the fiery chariot, and we're told it happens down at the Jordan River. But why here on the Jordan River? It could be anywhere on the Jordan River. And again, the biblical text in the book of Kings, Kings 2 is clear. After Elijah leaves the site where Elijah went up to heaven in the fiery chariot, where's the first place he gets to? Jericho. So here we are again at Jericho. Now we go down about 800 years after Elijah, and we get here to John the Baptist and Jesus, the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist. Now, of course, John the Baptist, his name, he had a Hebrew name. He wasn't called John. He was called Yochanan. And we know from the scriptures, he's from Jerusalem. He's a Jewish man from Jerusalem. He's a teacher. We might call him a rabbi. He's teaching the people to repent, to return to God. Now, when Jews from all over the world would come to the temple in Jerusalem on the three pilgrim festivals. The three pilgrim festivals, they would walk to Jerusalem. In Hebrew, the word is shalosh rigalim, the three festivals. Literally, though, the three legs, right? The three walking festivals where you walked up to Jerusalem. Now, those of you who know the map of Israel know that the Galilee is straight up north, right up this way. And if you were coming down, you would think from the Galilee, as Jesus and his disciples were doing, to come to Jerusalem for the festival of Passover, you would probably just come straight down from the north, south to Jerusalem. You would never get down here to the Jordan River at all. You just come down through the mountains. But they couldn't do that because the Samaritans lived between Jerusalem and the Galilee. And in the Second Temple period, 2,000 years ago, Samaritans and Judeans, Samaritans and Jews are enemies. From the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, when they declare that they are not to be seen as part of the people of God, not to be seen part of the people of Israel, there is a disconnect between the Samaritans and the Judeans, the Jews. So, what did people from the Galilee do? They would come down from the Galilee, get down to the area near the Sea of Galilee, and they would cross over the Jordan River to the eastern bank. Why? Because everything south of that was pagans. And the Jews didn't want to be walking through the pagan lands either. Where would they get food? They wouldn't be able to have kosher food. They'd be stuck. And they're going to the temple. They might become ritually impure. So they don't want to be in those areas. So they would cross to what is today the Kingdom of Jordan, the eastern bank of the Jordan River. 2,000 years ago, the days of the ministry of Jesus, a heavily Jewish area. All the towns there are Jewish. And they would come down, 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 until they got opposite Jericho again. Why Jericho? Because the main mountain pass from the Jordan River up to Jerusalem passes right by Jericho. Now, John the Baptist, Yochanan HaMatbil from Jerusalem, wants to exhort people and urge people, you're going to the house of the Lord, you're going up to Jerusalem. You need to be moving your heart and your actions towards repentance. And one step of repentance, of course, is a mikvah, right? Ritually cleansing yourself in living waters. It has to be rainwater or best a river water. And even though Jews coming to the temple probably ritually cleaned themselves before they left home, and they'll do so again in Jerusalem, John, as a good preacher, is standing here saying, folks, before you can ask God for your forgiveness, you must begin the forgiveness in your heart. Do a symbolic act. Immerse yourselves here in the Jordan River as you make your way up to Jerusalem. So we're told in the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 3, Jesus and his disciples are coming from the Galilee. They've crossed over to the eastern bank. They're coming down with the rest of the Jews, coming down through the Jewish areas on the eastern side of the Jordan River. They're now going to cross the river to go up to Jerusalem. And Jesus gets here, and he sees, at least in some of the text, his cousin, John, Yochanan, from Jerusalem, and Jesus says, I would also like to be ritually immersed as you're doing the rest of the pilgrims going up. And you know the story in Matthew 3, verse 13, then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. But John tried to deter him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and you come to me? But Jesus replied, let it be so for now. It is proper for us to do this to fulfill all righteousness. Now, Jesus was not going to take away from the important position that his older cousin John had, that his older colleague John had. They had the same message, return to the way of God, be faithful to God. And he's essentially saying the time's not right, the time will come. This is a site where Christians from all over the world come, and on the Christian Friends of Israeli Community tours of Israel, we come here as well. It's a place where people are baptized today as well, recreating the baptism of Jesus by John, a moment of incredible spiritual heights for people to be able to do the same action, if you will, the ritual immersion on the way to Jerusalem here in the Jordan River.
Here we are at the Jordan River, and it has always been such a thrill for me to stand right here as we see this today very narrow river dividing the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the state of Israel. And to know that it is right here that the children of Israel crossed the Jordan under Joshua and first entered the land of Israel. Now we know in biblical times that the eastern part of the Jordan River was also part of the Commonwealth of Israel. Today it's different. Today that is the state of Jordan. But you know, one of the things that we need to remember is that even then, when both sides of the Jordan were in Israel's hands, this part had extra significance. It had extra holiness. How do we know that? First of all, the very place where God first promises the land to Abraham is here on this side. Abraham also has to do his crossing, and it's only when he gets here, near Shechem, north of here, to the Oak of Moreh, does God promise the land to him. But I would take that even further. Moses, standing in the desert 40 years, he is able to be on the eastern side of the Jordan. He's the one who actually conquers that area from the Amorites and from, that whole area from there, the Edomites, everything there, he conquers, and yet God does not let him enter here. He does not let him cross the Jordan. So there's something even in biblical times, there's something much more holy, much more central to the land of Israel on this side of the Jordan than on that side. Okay, now let's fast forward. We're now in the 70s. First of all, 1967 until 1967, this area, both sides of the Jordan, are in the hands of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Israel has no access to it. In 1967, this is part of the land that is liberated by Israel. Here in the Jordan Valley, it is amazingly hot. I can't convey on film how hot this area is. But for about 6 months of the year, the temperature here is well above 40 centigrade, well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, it's not the kind of place that people hang out here outside. Now today, we have a lot of Jewish communities here, and we're going to visit some of them, and we see they have done amazing things with agriculture. But picture what it felt like for them when they first came in. The earliest communities were started right after the Six-Day War, mostly as army outposts. And then in the 70s, gradually, these communities became regular civilian communities, but they had no air conditioning, they had no shade, and they're working to farm and try to turn this very dry land, very hot land, into something productive. Now, if we remember, go back to the Bible, one of the synonyms for the city of Jericho is the city of the date palms, Ir HaTmarim, city of the date palms. And indeed, what we do know is in this area, not just the waters from the Jordan River, but there are some natural oases and underground springs in this area surrounding Jericho. And therefore, even from ancient times, we have date palms growing here. So one of the first things that the people who come here in modern times, the Jews who come back to liberate and settle this land beginning in the 70s, one of the things they're going to plant is date palms. And how do they know that will thrive? Well, they read it in their Bible, and they know that date palms thrive here. And in fact, date palms also, something amazing. The date palm has a natural water purification system. So you can actually use dirty water in irrigating your date palms, and the date tree itself is a natural purifier of that water, so that the dates that grow on that tree are pure and beautiful. And in fact, today, the best dates, it's a brand of date called Medjool. The Medjool dates grow here in the Jordan Valley, and it's one of the most important sources of income for the communities that are here in the Jordan River. So here we are at the place where the children of Israel first came into the land of Israel. This, the Jordan Valley, is the gateway to the land of Israel from biblical times till today. And indeed, all of these communities along this long, narrow passage, 400 meters below sea level, hot as anything, these are the people who are today protecting Israel's border from any possible invasion from the east, right here across this narrow river where we have the Kingdom of Jordan. This is Sondra Oster-Barris welcoming you to the Jordan Valley on behalf of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities.
I'm Danny Ehrlich with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities here at modern-day Gilgal in the Jordan River Valley. We're going to be stepping back in time, though, over 3,200 years ago to the days of Joshua and the tribes of Israel, when they crossed the Jordan River from the east bank here to the west bank of the Jordan River, and they encamp here and go on to conquer Jericho and the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, which will become known as the land of Israel, over 3,200 years ago. Now, we're told, first of all, that they need to cross the Jordan River. And it's not easy to take millions of people across the Jordan River. We know what happened at the Red Sea. The Red Sea, God parts the Red Sea as the Egyptians are chasing Israel, leaving Egypt. Now we're at the end of 40 years in the desert, coming into the land of Israel. And once again, there's going to be a parting of the waters as the Jordan River is parted to allow the tribes of Israel to enter the land of Canaan, the land of Israel. After they have crossed the Jordan River from the east side to the west side of the Jordan River, and they're here now in the Jordan River Valley, Joshua commands each tribe to take a boulder and to join them all together as a memorial site to remember God's great salvation and saving and helping the people to cross the Jordan River, bringing us to the land that he promised us, and the unity of the people all together. And then from there, we're told that they go slightly to the east side of Jericho, maybe a little east and to the north, and they camp in a place called Gilgal. Gilgal. Now, Gilgal has the Hebrew roots which can mean round, tire, circle. It gives us the impression of something that is round. We don't know exactly what the word might mean in every case. And not only that, we get the impression from the biblical texts that there's more than one Gilgal. That Gilgal is a name of a type of place where a large group of people can gather. So the kibbutz here, Kibbutz Gilgal, is named for that Gilgal, which the tribes of Israel come to camp right after they cross the Jordan River into the conquest of the land. But we're given a second, that's in Joshua chapter 4. But in the next chapter, chapter 5, we're given a second reason as to perhaps why the place where they camped was called Gilgal. In chapter 4, it simply tells us they camped at the Gilgal, which seems to be, again, a name of a type of place. But then we're going to get a specific biblical connotation with this Gilgal. What happens there? Remember, in the desert, 40 years in the desert, the males who are supposed to be circumcised on the 8th day were not, those who were born in the desert were not circumcised. And it's considered a certain mark of shame by the Bible to have males who have not been circumcised. So the first thing they're going to do when they come to the land and they camp here in the Jordan River Valley is they circumcise all the males. Remember, who's left? Essentially, it's people who are all born in the desert, or the children of those who left Egypt, who perish in the desert. Their children are the ones who come into the land. So they do the circumcision here. You have an entire people, at least the males of the people, who are in recovery for a little while from the circumcision ceremony. And Joshua says that what he says in Hebrew here, and it's Joshua chapter 5, verse 9. Vayomer Adonai Yoshua, God says to Joshua, Hayom galoti et cherpat Mitzrayim alechem veyikrashem makom ahu Gilgal ad hayom hazeh. And in English, and the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away from you the disgrace of Egypt. Now you are circumcised. And remember, we said Gilgal is like roll, circle, wheel. So in Hebrew, it's a play on word. So apparently this place was called Gilgal because it was a Gilgal, but then it gets the extra meaning of the place where the shame of Egypt has been rolled off upon us, where we fulfill the divine commandment of circumcision, and this is Gilgal.
The Kibbutz of Gilgal, established right near biblical Gilgal. It's an amazing place, and if you think about it, this was the entry point of the nation of Israel into the land of Israel, and this is where the nation camped down here in the valley, and those who were the soldiers climbed up the mountains, moving west to conquer the rest of the land of Israel. Now, in 1967, this area is liberated and comes under Jewish control for the first time in almost 2,000 years. This, though, is a border area. This is right across that little narrow river from the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, who has just been defeated in a war. So initially, this area is settled by soldiers. It is an army camp, but it's also an army camp that is supposed to also prepare the area for eventual civilian settlement. It is only in 1973 when the first group of civilians came and settled here. Now, you can imagine it is so hot here in this area. If you look around, the barren hilltops that we see in the background, that's what this whole area looks like. You're seeing trees here. There were no trees here. There was nothing here. And so the people that came here in 1973 were starting from scratch. And They planted date palms. We know from the Bible that this is an area of date palms, and they plant date palms. And they take advantage of underground sources of water and bringing water from other places in Israel, and they use irrigation. Of course, Israel is one of the international leaders in irrigation, and they actually turn this place into a fertile area. The date palms, and now we also have grapes. We have vineyards of grapes, table grapes. In addition, they have different kinds of factories and enterprises here. It is a kibbutz, so that all the income that comes in, whether somebody in the kibbutz works at a regular job in a city, or the income from the various industries and enterprises of the kibbutz, all the income is pooled, and then everybody receives the money that they need to support their families. Now, this community was always very small. And just a few years ago, it was only 30 families. And in the space of just the last couple of years, they've grown to 40 families. Many of those people, children who grew up here on the kibbutz and came back to live here. And the kibbutz today is looking at future growth, and it is really an attractive place for people to come and live, not just the people who grew up here, but there's also families that are coming from different parts of Israel, because it is a cohesive community. So we have a community of people living together, determined and devoted to the land of Israel, to making it a beautiful and productive place again. We have the date palms, we have vineyards, we have a wonderful dairy farm here, and they even raise turkeys. So there's a lot of going on here. There's a very good printing company here, a lot going on, lots of children. As you can see, we're sitting here in the playground. The Kibbutz of Gilgal, starting from its biblical roots to what we are seeing today in 2020, the Kibbutz of Gilgal is here to stay and doing wonderful things in the land of Israel. I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below, as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.